All right. So where are we at here, guys? Oh, I didn't put that thing back in the background, did I? Give me a second here. Make sure that that's working. Got more things to check on. More things to get up and working in the environment. All right. Let's go down over here. You guys should be able to see my screen now and hear me, and that's all good. Okay, so what are we doing? We're kind of continuing what we were working on yesterday, which was this idea that we wanted to get into the Linux field, right? We wanted to maybe see about getting these Linux roles. And I was putting together some stuff, and I have even more notes now. I've been adding more and more. But what did we talk about yesterday? We got into like some of the things you should do before you start looking for work, like figuring out what you want to do, where you want to be. And then we started talking about some Linux skills, right? Documentation, incident management, troubleshooting. We got into those. And really the last thing I talked about before we stopped was this monitoring. And I was telling you that there's a lot about monitoring. You know, you can build out tooling and stuff like this. And one of the things I was about to show you guys, I think, right as we were getting done, was this from our monitoring drawing. And this is how we monitor in my home lab, right? And this is a very similar monitor right here that I use in actually a few different HPC environments that I work in. Now, depending on what they want to do, we don't have to use all pieces of this. This is what my home lab monitoring looks like, right? This is what I do. And in fact, actually right now it's in various states of disarray because some of these need to be worked on. I need to fix some of my Grafana monitoring into there. But generally speaking, if we were talking over here about monitoring, I was showing you guys yesterday that there's all these like Linux commands that you could run to do pretty much all of these things here, but there's no giving that over to a project manager or a normal manager. They're not going to be able to ingest it, right? It's not going to make any sense to them. So what we were doing then is we were saying, well, what do? We give them a Grafana dashboard, right? We give them something like this guy over here that they can look at and see, like a heads-up display, the information and the time frames that they want, right? So the tool at the end, the visualization piece, almost universally, presentation or visualization, is almost always some tool like Grafana. Another one that's kind of popular that you can kind of give some managers access to is Splunk. And as far as like being able to see some visualizations, Splunk does have those. And also Kibana. Kibana is one that people will sometimes use. If you've ever heard of the old ELK stack, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. Kibana I've seen do pretty well for, I don't want to say like, it's not really dashboarding, but there is visualizations there that can be kind of gleaned from the information. So there's some of that stuff. But anyways, so then I have some mid-tier storage, and this storage has different things that are taking in information in different ways from our ingest tier. Ingest tier is on any server. Any server or process I want to monitor really can throw data into my different storage. If it's Telegraph agent that's doing it, Telegraph has a tremendous amount of input agents where it can gather info, and then a bunch of output processing that it can do to send it to storage. So in this case, I send it to InfluxDB2, and the Telegraph agent is doing mostly system monitoring, what we would call telemetry, right? And it's sending data every 15 or every 10 seconds. And if it's ever not able to send the data, if it's ever getting like something other than a 200, possibly it will store it and batch it for up to like 15 minutes. So there's some storage and that kind of stuff, right, going on. Oh, wait, Kibana can be good for visualizing results from a query, but that is true. Yeah, so Kevin, that is a very good point. And this is kind of what I was saying yesterday with like this monitoring stuff. Like we can do all of these things, the same things that I want to know here, I can know with Linux commands, but I can't give this. Like I can't give this to management. It will break their brains. They will sit there and look at you like, you know, like you're in a comic strip or something. Like they will just be like, what the hell is this Looney Tune doing? And I tell people all the time, we're casting spells in an environment. People don't really understand what Linux people do. So a lot of times we have to give them tools In fact, in one of my series, I make you guys do like a CSV output. And the reason you do CSV is because that's how we feed management, right? We got to feed management, make management happy. And project managers and normal managers can typically read a CSV because it opens in Excel, right? And then they can make their pivot tables and stuff. But ingest over here, you should know how your agents work. So like if we go to like one of my Telegraph agents on one of my boxes real quick, let's think about what I was just saying about, let's hope it's on here. Let's go look at telegraph.conf, right? And in here, I might / and say batch, because I think the word batch should show up in here. And it might have a certain amount of batching, right? And there may be a certain amount of batching that can happen within the system. And there's probably some configured defaults that I could know, or I might want to know. Where's it at? Where's it start here? There's my query. And I can see, you know, whatever information I want to know about batching, maybe, you know, if we are using batching or not, right? I can see this. Plus, this is specifically for certain processors. There are 4 things that happen inside of Telegraph if you care, right? If you're like, hey, Scott, I do want to use Telegraph. There's 4 things it does. There's inputs and outputs. And then you might say, oh, I bet the one in the middle is processor. Yeah, processing is one of them, and the other one's aggregation. So it's input, process, or aggregation, and then also output, which is, you know, kind of computer science if you really care. Yeah, they do love dashboards, Kevin. That's true. That's very true. I have a brother who works with, that's all my brother does is data. And he says he'll build out these Power BIs and all these things. And then people will be like, hey, can you put one of those buttons on there that just makes it into a spreadsheet for us? And he's just like face palming. But I've told him, like, he knows, he's a data guy. He's been around long enough to know that, like, it's no exaggeration to say that spreadsheets run the world. Spreadsheets, like Excel, literally runs the world. The world of business, for sure. I mean, people, you know, obviously inside of tech, there's other things going on, but it's pretty much Excel spreadsheets. So batching things up, not everything needs to be real time. Absolutely, absolutely. And this is actually an important thing. To know how your agent works, like a Telegraph agent pushes data if it can, and it can batch it and hold it. But Node Exporter is completely different. It just squeezes data up. It's like squeezing up data out of a tube of toothpaste. And it literally sits right here on the server as a web page to be scraped. So if Prometheus is down, or if Prometheus doesn't do its poll for those 10 seconds, that data is lost to forever. That data is lost to time. It has passed by in entropy and such. And what do I mean by that? Well, you can go to any of your boxes. So if this box is running, Node Exporter, which I believe it is, yep, on 9100, I should be able to curl 127.0.0.1 on port 9100 and see my Node Exporter output. If that data is, by the way, it's slash metrics. That's my bad. Yeah, there's all my metrics. That's all my metrics data. But this is why I say, like, when you guys talk or use tools, you've got to know how are the data fed, or how are the data moving through the system. We're ingesting it here, but Node Exporter, if you just set up Node Exporter, the data will never leave the box. You must tell something to scrape it, like Prometheus in this case. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you can aggregate over here, sometimes you can aggregate here. It really depends on a thing that we like to talk about called resolution. How like clear a picture do we want to see? Do we want to see every minute on a box? Do we want to see every hour? Some of you guys, we've talked about, like, if I don't think I have SAR running on here, but let's say SAR-R. Yeah, I do have SAR running. But look at how often SAR runs on my box. SAR will tell you, this is memory data, but it'll also tell you CPU data. I think SAR by itself will just give you CPU info. But I want to show you guys something real quick. If you were on a web server, right, this is a slice of that box every 10 minutes. Well, what if I told you that web servers often experience, especially behind load balancers, they can often experience 1 to 2 minutes of very, very high load from connections, but then that would drop. And I say, well, let's pull out our calculators and we'll do some quick cocktail math. We won't even pull up a calculator. What if for the course of 10 minutes, you had 100% utilization for 2 of those minutes, and then you had close to 0 utilization for the other 8 minutes of that time. Do you know what this next slice would look like if you did that? It would look like 20% utilization, right? At most, maybe even less, depending on how the window slides, right? But my point is, you wouldn't see spikes. This tool would be ineffective at showing you spikes. And I tell people that, like, often, especially with like web application troubleshooting, you will not get a good view of what's happening through a tool that lacks precision. This lacks precision in the area that we call resolution. Now, you know, if you were to do like iostat-c5, this will give you every 5 seconds for the rest of your life, right? Should be every 5 seconds. For the rest of this server's life until I stop it or whatever, and I could throw that in a file, or I can have, you know, some tool like IOTop, or I don't know, there's all kinds of ATOP and other kinds of tops and stuff that will gather data at a higher resolution. But then again, you know, we go back to the, I can't give this to a manager. I can't tell a manager to go run this command. They won't understand. So we have to have some other way of doing it. And I would tell you guys, that's the main thing to think about when we're talking about like monitoring and getting into monitoring systems, and as far as getting into the Linux role. The monitoring part of it is, you know, I can do all this work and I can show other techs how to do this work, and I can write standard operating procedures around this type of work for us. But when I want to go to my next level of like a manager or a project manager or somebody else that wants to look at this other data, I need to think about how they're ingesting that data. How are they getting it and that kind of stuff. Every 5 minutes and we don't alert till we see 3 polls. Absolutely. Yep. Sometimes, yeah, we'll have different timeouts and different waits, and sometimes we call them hold down time. There's all kinds of names for like how we do that. I know in Cisco they call them hold down timers while they're waiting for something to come back or not. Yeah, before we call something down. Yeah, because one of the worst things, and this is very true in monitoring, one of the worst things that can happen is like very bad over alerting. Because what happens to the kid that keeps crying wolf? Does anybody know that story of the kid that cries wolf? Well, for the first 10 times, maybe even, people come out to help him. But on that 11th time, everybody ignores him. And it's very true that if you over alert out of a system, a closed system that's alerting only things that should be really looked at in that time frame, man, if you over alert, your engineers are going to turn their phones and their pagers off, and the one that really is going to burn you and take some system downtime is going to get ignored. And you really don't want that. All right. So that's something to think about. And I think we talked a little bit about SIEM and SOAR and IDSs and IPSs and how we treat those. Operating the running system. So this is still in the area where we say, you know, what do we do to get the job? First thing is you figure out what you want. Next, you start learning some Linux, and we're down here in kind of like operating the running systems. And you should understand what type of environment you're in. Are you in a physical system or are you in a virtual environment? And you might say, well, Scott, well, what's the things that I have to think about there? Well, in physical servers and physical environments, I can physically go look at a machine for lights, right? I've always been, I'm very colorblind, but I can look down a line of servers and see if one of them's got a different type of blinking. It's very, very kind of noticeable to me. And if you look on the back of like 4 NICs on a server and one of them's blinking a different way, it's pretty obvious, right? So that's one thing. You can look down the rows of servers and see which servers are on, right? The ones that have lights on and have fans spinning are on. So, you know, we can connect to them in different ways. We used to go push a crash card over, and we used to actually go and turn these servers on, especially when we deploy them, right? We have to deploy them and then do what's called an elevation chart. An elevation chart, if you've never seen an elevation chart for a server room, or an elevation rack, right? Oops. Might just be like elevation rack. It will be a drawing that's something like this, typically in some type of Visio. And it will have, let's see if somebody's done one in Visio. Yeah, it'll look like this often. And it'll have each of the U's in the rack of where the thing is. And if you say, well, Scott, that's not that big a deal, I'll just go find it later, you're going to forget. It's loud in the data center. Other people are going to move stuff. You don't want to be dealing with stuff. Yeah, it kind of looks like this, and it'll show you where all the things are. And typically it'll show where things are linked up and what switch ports they go to. that kind of stuff. That's all very useful. And there's all kinds of different elevation charts and diagrams that people will use. It'll very rarely be a real picture. It'll almost always be some type of drawing like this. And I do use these at work, and I use them in my presentations when I like show high performance compute to customers and stuff. When we actually build stuff, it's part of my training. Just repairing the same down service every 15 minutes for 2 days isn't a good thing. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Video templates are pretty good for major hard. Yeah, that's true. Visio, yeah, there are some good Visio templates. That's true. And a lot of people that do diagramming often, their company will splurge for them to get a little bit of Visio is pretty much the standard in that space. Although I've seen a fair amount of good drawings on Draw.io that people have done, and I've seen some pretty good drawings on what's that other Excalidraw. But when we're doing like engineering precision and rack elevations, most of the time you're going to keep that in a Visio, and Visio stores as a .vsd file. You might say, Scott, how do you know that? Well, because that's what my students always turn into me. They always give me Visio VSDs, even though they're supposed to take a picture of it and put it in like a PowerPoint for me, but they always do it the other way. But that's fine. I don't care that much. Virtual environments are different. We can't I show you guys this sometimes. This is my my home environment, and then I also have that Proxmox box. But I can go physically touch any one of these 4 servers right here. I can go physically touch them in the environment. But like, let's say Hostbox right here isn't doing too hot, and Hostbox is just sitting there on. We're going to eventually turn it off because we've decommissioned. It's been out of the network since October, as far as all of my networking stuff with it. But if I want to connect to this box, I've got 2 options. If it's up on the network still, I can go hit it from one of my environments over SSH. That's assuming its networking is up, right? And then that's assuming that that's the right box, that is. Or if I can't get to it over the network, or if the box is physically down, I have to come to the console here. And console connections like this are very similar. They're very similar to sitting at a crash cart, physically connecting into a server in some way, right? Visio can easily be stored fully. Yeah, that's true. That does matter. Yeah, because if you have something that goes off site, then now you have other considerations, absolutely. Especially if it's like, you can't use free tools for most of this stuff. You got to spend some money, especially if you're doing real consulting and you're really dealing with customers that have security requirements. We have to pay and that kind of stuff. This is sitting here hanging, but I can get to it over here so I can see what's going on. I don't know why that's sitting there. But the point is, that's how we would get to it, right? So physical environments start differently than virtual environments. Virtual environments tend to spin up very quickly. Physical environments may take, in some instances, 10 minutes to boot up, depending on what the server hardware is doing. If you're in an IBM physical environment, you may be talking, I know some of the guys use AIX still, the old P595s that I used to work with, if they powered down clean, it was about an hour for them to come back up. And if they powered down bad, it took about 2 hours for them to come back up. That's all their power on self checks and just the system really making sure it's ready to come back up. So you got to think about that, right? You got to make sure you have a redundant power and that kind of stuff. So these are the things around operating running systems. The other thing around operating running systems that I would tell you is it's all the activities right here of like making sure a server is working correctly. So like I jump to a box, I don't know, let's go like Hammer 1, because I don't think anybody's on Hammer 1. So we jump into Hammer 1, and what might be healthy or unhealthy about the server, like just general operating system around the server. I may say I expect to see, let's just do PSEF and see, we see a bunch of processes, right? Well, I may have a bunch of processes that I expect to exist on this server. So what I might do, this is one of my favorite ones, I'll do like an awk, and then I'll print the first field, right? And that'll give me a bunch of these. And then what I'll do is I'll take them and I will sort them so that they're in order. And then I'll do a unique -C, so it'll just count them up for me. And I see a lot of root stuff running. I see node exporter running. I expected to see, let's just say, I expected to see a web server in this environment because of the name of the server. So I'm like, why isn't my web server running? Or why is, this can just be a quick little heads up for me on boxes to make sure that they have the things that I expect them running, right? That might be one. Another one is what's mounted. I expect there to be 4 NFS mount points in this environment. I see them there. I see them there, right? I see how they're mounted. I expect them to be mounted a certain way, and I expect them to be mounted with certain permissions, maybe from my security team. Now, we have tools that'll do this kind of audit. I'm just showing you guys maybe, if you wanted to go spot check a system that somebody told you wasn't working correctly, these are the types of things that you can go kind of check. I see that I have the right size that I expect. Nothing looks full. I'm not seeing any kind of space issues. I might look real quick on memory. We always check the big ones, right? So uptime will show us how utilized the CPU is. Free-M will show us how utilized the memory is. DF-H will show us how utilized the storage is. Not the I/O to the storage, but just the actual space that's available still. And if the box is mostly sitting and chilling, you don't have to go dig in on tools that will, because there are tools that'll go look at the block devices in the environment, and we can make sure that there's not a lot of read and writes going to that box. Just kind of keep an eye on it, right? You might want every second, you might want something else, but the point is you can go see that the box is mostly chilling, and then these may be written into like a standard operating procedure for like a server checkout before we hand it back over to the users or something. There's all kinds of stuff. Yeah, Kevin, that's exactly true. Yeah, AIX, the underlying hardware takes a long time to come back up, 100%. Yeah, DF-K, yeah, that's true. I haven't used that one in a long time. Yeah, that's like an old memory there. Because I left the AIX world around 2013, so it's been a long time now. Wow, yeah, that's like the old magic for me. So then, so we do that, and then there's ways. So you say, well, how would I learn more about operating like the running systems? And I would tell you, we've got Killer Coda Labs. We've got stuff out there for you guys to practice on, get better at this kind of stuff. You can go out to Killer Coda. And you can look at, I've got a bunch of labs. There's a bunch of other labs here that go over different topics in like running and setting up a Linux environment, right? So that's kind of your operating running systems, seeing what users are on there and that kind of stuff. Then we come down to like patching and updating. Like servers exist typically in 2 ways, and we talked about this a little bit this weekend, but it's like they exist in 2 ways. They're either stateful, and they're constantly getting older and getting changed from their original baselines and build books. And then, or they are stateless, and that means that every time they reboot, they go back to their original state, so no changes stay persistent on them, right? Those are kind of the 2 ways that we build things. So you say, well, why do you mention that here in the patching updating? Well, because in patching updating, that's going to completely determine how we do patching. If we are on the older style of stateful nodes, which are, by the way, still very common, stateful nodes are big fat servers sitting out there, and we make a lot of money by updating them and keeping them running. And that's what a lot of us techs and admins and engineers get paid for, is to keep those things running. But the other way is we would patch kind of in a lower environment and build our image out and get our image to the level of security that we wanted, test it, and then we would move the patched image in place and reboot the nodes, and they would come up with the new image, right? And that would be typically, we'd have a burn-in period and maybe like a 80-20 type burn-in before we go fully. Some people call that canary testing. Some people call that one-box testing. There's a bunch of different names for it. But patching systems are keeping them up to date using your tools that are there to, check and then move things forward. Typically, there's some kind of rebooting in there, so we have to be able to roll through reboots of servers and those kind of things. So we got to be able to do that. Down here, we got to be able to configure our servers, right? So we got to be able to harden them. We have to be able to harden to a standard. Hardening a box, there's a whole bunch of components to it. I think I even have an old, let me see if I have an old drawing on, I think I called it originally. Let's see if I have it. I don't see it as one of these. let's see, there's one of these. I thought I used to have it on the Linux Systems Administration one, but I have that one open and I don't think I see it there. Yeah, I don't see it on this one. All right. Well, I don't want to go digging around for it right now. So just suffice it to say, we harden boxes to a standard, typically some kind of compliance framework. And hardening is more than just a security baseline, though, because like a security baseline will, CIS benchmarks or STIGs. Typically, you can use an OpenSCAP scanner or OpenSCAP tool. These are setting up the server the way that it should be, and that's cool. But there's nothing in the CIS benchmarks or the STIGs about whether you're running a web server or a database server, right? That's not really there. However, there are benchmarks there are benchmarks and STIGs for databases. But where I'm going with that is hardening a box would be, I don't put a web server where a web server isn't needed. Why would I have Apache on a server that doesn't run Apache? That's silliness. And if it was there for some reason, some god-awful reason, you've got Apache or whatever on there, you would turn it off and you would put it behind a firewall. And hardening is changing the users, making sure you don't have any of the original users and changing their usernames if they are there. That's also part of access control, right? But hardening a box is all of these things kind of together. How do we add users? And if we do add users directly, like in some cases, Oracle there needs to be 2 users for Oracle databases still, Oracle and Grid. Those are 2 users that are local. So a lot of times we just build those local. And then everything else, because they're always going to be there, everything else we turn into like an identity and access management issue where our system trusts other systems to allow users in. So, yeah. Excalidraw in VS Code is a nice little thing that I found a while back. Yeah. And actually you can take these and you can store them directly up in the cloud. Like I pay for Excalidraw in the cloud, but the VS Code extension is free. So you can get the VS Code extension for free. So yeah, this is all free. And then I have a little stylus that I use only on this monitor is the only monitor that I use my stylus on. I don't do it across my other 2 monitors, right? Because I got a pretty big work area. So only in here, basically in this area right here, I can draw. I could draw all over the screen, but I just don't want to be over here because it's too messy. So, okay. So that's configuration. Almost all of these things ask you for some type of automation. Like how are you going to do all of these things in a repeated and controlled and understandably good manner? So we've got Ansible. Ansible's like one of the kings of running an environment and monitoring and changing things on servers. When I say monitoring, I like report out with Ansible. So you can write reports, things like this. Every day, every morning, we get this. Sandbox, how's the environment doing? And this is going and dynamically checking things to make sure that all my servers are up and making sure that they haven't rebooted. Oh, I got to fix that report. But this part up here does work because remember for 3 days we had these boxes down. And then we fixed them. Once we fixed them, after this day here, then we never had that. They're not down anymore. Right? But we can see that every morning, and then we can go fix stuff in our environment that doesn't look like it should. Terraform is really great for like net new environments or environments that you want to fully control as one environment because Terraform keeps track of everything with its TF state file, right? Smitty number 1 said, do sysadmins have to deal with end user support? Yes. Systems engineers less so, but systems engineers still deal with other devs, so you still have end user support even though there are other devs and engineers. You're never going to, I don't think you're ever going to get away with it or get away from it unless you're going the architect route. The architect doesn't really answer questions like that, but all the rest of us still do in some way. Plus, even if I didn't have to do it, if somebody couldn't figure out something that I had built because I didn't build it correctly or I didn't document it well, the question's still going to come to me anyways. So I often tell you guys, like, if you ever think you're ever going to get away from documentation, you're definitely wrong, because no matter how high you rise, whatever you built is going to have your name on it, and then it's still going to come to you anyways. So, oh well, you got to deal with it. So anyways, there's those things. And then now that was all the Linux stuff that I think you need to know. And I'm turning this into a presentation, and maybe I might even turn it into one of these little like Lean Pub courses because they have these cool little courses there. And the reason I would do that is because then people can go and do that, and then they can get themselves a little certificate or something. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a good differentiator for somebody. Like a ProLug certificate around, sysadmin type stuff. Yeah, Kevin, devs are my customers too. Yeah, exactly. They can absolutely be as much of a pain. In fact, they know a lot, but they very rarely care about cleaning stuff up, and that's always been my problem. People go, well, why don't you just give everybody root? And it's like, because it's not the wild, wild west. We can't just have everybody running around in charge of everything. They won't clean up their environments, I promise you. And then when patching comes around, you're going to be the one stuck with it. All right. So on the business side of things, right? Like, what does the work look like, right? Like, most of us can do all the Linux stuff. You look at all the Linux stuff and you go, okay, Scott, I know I want to do Linux. I can do all that stuff. It's way super easy. You're not telling me anything I don't know. Well, maybe if you're not in the field, this may be something you don't know. So hopefully this part hopefully is useful to you then. I say, what does the business side of it look like? Like what does a company pay you for? Like, where does the work come from? Well, if you're on operations teams, you're going to have a ticket. You're going to have ticket queues. You're probably going to have like response times. You're probably going to have tracking on closeout and state of tickets, right? So you're going to have people tracking those things. People are going to be coming to you and going, hey, why is that ticket been sitting in that queue so long? Because tickets that are sitting too long will pop up in what we call like operational reviews later. So yeah, if you're not closing your tickets or if your response times are high, your teams are not going to be happy. And then within tickets, there tends to be like a priority gets assigned, and that's triage, right? We call that the concept of understanding triage. And that can be typically like P1 through like P4. Different companies will do this differently, but P1 is like production. Maybe P1 might be like production, outage, all hands on deck. And then all the way down to like maybe P4 is, user can't scratch their nose, right? That's some low thing. And there, guys, you can design these all kinds of different ways. Teams are going to configure these all types of different ways, right? Like the P's, maybe the higher P's are the higher one. It can be any different way in a company. Yeah, impact and urgency. Yeah. Like, is it actually touching production? Is it just like a dev thing? Like one that's surprisingly high, people don't know this, but P2s can be dev environments, but multiple teams affected. If I have multiple teams of developers sitting on their hands not doing anything, that is a cost. That is a significant cost to your business, right? When there's stuff. So my point is, this is just examples, right? This is, but it can be any type of thing like this. And P3 may be, dev environment, one user down, right? That kind of stuff. And then this is just user can't scratch their nose, not no functions down, right? Like I was being silly there, but it's true. Like the user can't get to something. Yeah. And these again are typically assessed by impact, and they're typically going to come in based on, what those teams know of that, how they've been trained, that kind of stuff. Osam over on the Twitch or on the YouTube side said, can we find a job? I think, I can definitely help you find the skills to get a job. I think I can definitely help with that. I don't know if I can necessarily help you find one. It depends where you're at in the world. Depends like what you're trying to do. We have a lot of stuff in the Discord around in our jobs and interviews channel. And typically people are in here talking about jobs. In fact, I was going to talk Dolmanak maybe later about the AWS stuff that he's looking at. I thought to maybe talk about this a little bit because I still am a Solutions Architect Pro with them. So, yeah. So the skills, I'm actually, so that's what this talk is. And yesterday we went over the first part of this, and then we started out in here around monitoring And now we're down on like kind of the business side of things. So where does work come from? You get tickets. Trouble tickets come in, and they're just that. They're doing trouble. They're going to cause you trouble. So then maybe monitoring and proactively fixing systems may cause you work. Now, a lot of times your manager, if your manager gets graded on how many tickets are closed, your manager will wisely tell you every time you find something like this, put in a ticket for yourself. It may seem like a little bit extra work, but if that's how your team is getting graded, and the difference between, 1,200 and 1,500 tickets closed out by the end of the year is going to be the difference between you keeping a 3 or 4 person head count. Your manager's definitely smart to tell you, put in trouble tickets. Hey, you found storage was getting high on some of these dev nodes. Put in a trouble ticket, fix it. And you're like, but that doubles my work. But he's right. It's saving your job. It's showing what you do, because honestly, a lot of times in the world, if you're doing all the things right, nobody else knows you're doing things right. And that's kind of the double-edged sword to this one. Like I tell people all the time, if you're proactive at work and people watch you fix things, and managers notice that people are always like, oh yeah, Scott wrote that doc up the other day, I'll pull it up in this bridge call meeting and fix stuff. And they're like, oh shoot, I'm always hearing that guy's name. That is good for you. That is a good thing. I think that's very good. Sam said, sorry to ask about something else, but what do I think of Bug Bounty? I think Bug Bounty is a great program. I think that's a good place to go. If you want to do Bug Bounty work, if you want to do, so guys, if you don't know, Bug Bounty is red teaming stuff. It is, companies give you places that you can attack ostensibly. It's you can attack their company, and then you write up bug bounties and things that you found and vulnerabilities and stuff. And then if you get a little bit of clout on there, you get invited to bigger ones and that kind of stuff. And I think that's a great way to get your name out there if you want to do that type of work. That's not exactly what I do. I'm much more on the blue team side of it. I was the red team lead for a little while, but it was not. We had the team kind of fall apart, and I was going to have to rebuild it. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'll tell you guys. I've told you guys about that before, but if you guys want to talk more about that, we can. But monitoring and proactive system fixing, these are things that you can do, and it looks good, and your environment's clean, and everybody's happy. The other things that are going to give you work, managers, other teams, your manager, right? Your manager, he literally sets your priority. And a good manager will do that typically daily. We'll talk about these daily stand-up meetings here in a minute, because daily stand-up meetings are very important between you and your team on what's doing, who's doing what. But managers are, your manager is going to set a priority. Other teams' managers, like other teams' managers may ask for things, like they may ask you for favors and stuff, and you may even have a little bit of time here and there to do it. But really, a lot of that stuff should go through your manager, should go through your ticketing. And it's mostly, not a lot of companies do chargeback, but it's because, it's so that people know, like, hey, my guy worked 20 hours this month on that 20 hours, right? He only worked 120 hours for the company for this month. So those 20 hours were, 1/6 of his time, about, like, it's actually right at 1/6, isn't it, of his time. So it's like, I need to track that work. This is one of my rock stars, and this other managers always use them. That's fine, right? Like if it keeps the company rolling, but it should go through and it should be tracked in some way, because you want your team to get credit for it. You don't want somebody to get let go because you're not keeping track of your time, right? And not all companies are that precise about things, but some companies are cinching up the belts and letting people go, and there's that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then drive-by. I put drive-bys on there because it's very important. My manager used to sit directly behind me at AAA. He's a good buddy of mine, Daniel. He sat directly behind me, and there were two things. He could turn around at any time and be like, Scott, what are you doing? What's that on your monitor right there or whatever? And they used to always make fun of me because I'd always have something like this going. If I could type. something like this would always be going on my screen and a bunch of different monitors. So it looked like a bunch of stuff was happening on my screen, but I really wasn't doing anything. But my manager would turn around and be like, hey, can you get this number for this team? Or could you do this? Or could you hop in this meeting or whatever. So I'd get drive-bys all day. And that was always a fun thing. Hi, Templary Zagrio. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. Yeah, my manager used to do that stuff. And then how I would get him back is every morning so when I worked at AAA, we had a little cafeteria. And you could go over and they would make you scrambled eggs. So I would get scrambled eggs in the morning. And then I would put so much Tabasco sauce on them. I'd get like biscuits and gravy sometimes too. I'd put so much Tabasco sauce on that. And I had heard this joke one time about you use so much Tabasco sauce that the table behind you complains. That's exactly what would happen. I would bring it back to my desk and my boss would just get up and walk away for 10 minutes. Because the smell of Tabasco would be... I don't even like to... I mean, I like Tabasco, but I don't like it that much. But I liked it a lot so that I could mess with him. Yeah, that's one of my favorite. Me and that boss, we still keep in touch actually now, years later after working together. Yeah. So that's definitely useful. All right, so then the next one are meetings. Like what's the meeting workload going to look like? Well, you're probably going to have a daily stand-up every morning, right? And your daily stand-up is typically going to look something like this. Pull my little soft engineering skills. It's an old talk that I have. This is old engineering talk that I have. But a day in a life tends to, what did I call that? I did call that stand-up, right? Yeah, daily stand-ups look like these. We used to literally and physically stand up in them. We would make people all get together, and they should take no more than 15 minutes for your entire team. There's three topics you need to talk about in that meeting to be on top of things. What did you accomplish yesterday? Not what did you work on, right? What did you finish? What are you working on today, which could be a carryover from yesterday? And then what blockers do you have for tasks? So what did you accomplish yesterday? Hey, I finished this up, closed out the tickets, yada, yada. Or I finished up the work, but I didn't close out the tickets, and I'm going to do that this morning, whatever. Today, I'm working on this task and this task. And if your manager's good, and they're listening to you, and they've probably been in a status report meeting before this with other managers or whatever, they may say, oh, you know what, actually this other thing took priority today, that's what I need you on. Now in front of everybody, they've told you that. You may even say, hey, just want to clarify, you want me doing that, not these things, and they say yes, and then you're good, thumbs up, that's what I'm going to do. And then this is another one. If you've got a good manager, when you say, hey, I've got a blocker that like 2 weeks ago I got asked by the network team for something, I've given them like 3 responses back of like a question, and I haven't gotten a response back from the specific person that I asked about it, and I've CC'd the manager the last 2 times, right? Like they asked me for something, and I'm trying to get them the information, but I haven't heard back from them yet. A good manager or project manager that's sitting in this meeting will go, I got that, and that will be on them to go move the blocks out of your way. Engineers tend to be very, very good at very, very focused, specific tasks. That's what engineers are good at. So managers are there to get blockers out of your way. Good management will move blockers out of your way. What are the tasks you talk about? So whatever your tasks are, you've got work that's come in. This is mostly operations stuff that I'm talking about here. You will also have other types of work that comes in if you're like an engineer. They'll typically be like project tasks. And those will come in more from Kanban boards and that kind of stuff. And sometimes stand-up meetings are specifically agile, so they're talking about like what type of sprints you're running. Or guys, you're going to see these change forms all the time in the way that people are actually executing them. But these are the 3 things people tend to want to know. Yeah, and Kevin, to that point is it's not the engineer's job to go fist fight people. Trust me, I would love as an engineer to go fist fight people, but that's not my job. My job is to be a good engineer and get stuff done, close out work, build documentation and build books and build artifacts that move the process forward, right? That's what we build as engineers. If I have things that are blocking me, especially like another team asks you for it, you don't want somebody to come back later and be like, oh, I sent that email to Scott 3 weeks ago and he never got back to me. And you're like, you mother effer. What's easier is to have your manager go reach out to their manager and figure out, hey, is this really a priority? Because my guy's been willing to work with your guys since, whatever, and you guys just haven't caught up. And I tell people all the time, like, I won't hop in a meeting to just like do something quick that we could do over like a Teams call or something, or like a Slack huddle. I'll just hop on with the guy if they're willing. And I'll tell you, I get a lot of work done with people that are like kind of the other leads of stuff, because we're willing to just like hop in and do the thing real quick and figure it out, and then we don't need the other person anymore, and then we go about our day. So yeah, your tasks can be wherever your tasks have come from, Hex. And then there's this agile thing. I show this because I just think agile is the funniest thing. In fact, I showed a comic that I've been using for a long time. There was a comic that passed away, and he had some funny comics. And one of my favorite ones of his is from a long time ago, right here. Where's that at? Oh, it's an off topic. Where's that? It should be right here. This is one of my favorite ones right here. We're going to try something called agile programming. That means no more planning, and no more documentation. Just start writing code and complaining. I'm glad it has a name. That was your training. And that's how I've always felt about agile my whole career, ever since I first heard of it. The other one, if you guys ever see our bot in the server, this is who our bot is after, is the old Unix, condescending Unix user. So if you guys ever ask the bot anything in our Discord, that's his origin right there. Let's see if he knows his origin. Hold on. See if the bot knows his origin. What? I was cobbled together from a mountain of text, code snippets, man pages. And also one panel of a comic. He doesn't keep talking to you. You got to keep asking him questions, but that's actually funny. Your questions, my snark and the legacy of Unix lore. You never probably bothered to read. Hey, I know who the backup operator from hell is. Anyways, that's that. So stand-up meetings are important. They're going to be the types of things that you're going to run into. And then you're going to have typically like operational reviews. These are sometimes called readiness reviews. And it really just depends on what your team wants to call them. But what an operational review looks like is the last 24 hours of the company. Like what's going on. I actually built one a while back. Let me see if I have it here. It'll be dated to a specific date. So it'll probably be a little bit older. But I was doing these for a few weekends. We did these in the Discord here. Let me see if I have prologue. I think I called it operational. I think it's up one. There's operational Linux. Yeah, so this was like from last year. This was like I was giving us basically a prologue operational meeting, and this is what an operations meeting might look like, right? Somebody will pop up a screen like this, and they'll say, hey, here's the hardware status of the servers in our environment. Here's how much CPU and memory and disk that we have, the status of them, if anything's online or offline, if anything's problematic. It's definitely from the Dilbert comic, but a lot of his personality comes from that for sure. And then I might say, here's the system capacity, so we know the servers and how used they are for the last 24 hours. This may even show a 7 and 30 day type thing, or a 30 day and a 90 day thing. It just depends on what your team's operational capacity and workflow is, right? So we talk a little bit about system capacity, then maybe system usage. I can say how many people have logged into our servers. This was on the older Rocky environment, and I could tell you guys how many people had logged in, and what the lab usage. This was the lab system usage, really. And then if we had any 24 incident tracking bot outage, we did have 24. When I wrote this back in August of 2025, the bot had a bunch of, there was an outage and 24 users didn't get welcome to the server. So if you guys have ever been in our Discord, when you first come in, the bot welcomes you, right? And he's typically very rude about it. He says welcome, and then he gives him stop dawdling, asking questions. But for a while there, he was down. If we went back to August of 2025, for 24 users or whatever, they did not get welcomed into the server. And that's fine, you know, whatever. It's just if we were doing real incident tracking, that would be one of the incidents. If I had any other incidents in like a work queue, they would come up here. And we may have, in the incident tracking, we may have a little thing over to the side that has the numbers of incidents that have passed 3 days or something. Because incidents past 3 days tend to have some other thing going on with them. And maybe maybe we have a policy that if after 7 days of not being closed, a ticket is always looked at in this meeting. I promise you, if a manager has to answer for some ticket that's open for some stupid thing every single morning after a week, you will hear about that ticket every day, because that manager does not want to put his coffee down and answer in that operations meeting why one of his people won't just put freaking Calce on a server for somebody. They do not. I'm telling you right now, you're going to hear stuff. Yeah. Current problem tracking. Bot continues to call me Scoot. That's a problem. That's not a feature. That's a bug for sure, right? That's a current problem tracking. Upcoming change windows. If we knew that things were going down, or if there were ECBs, like electronic change board stuff that was coming out, we might note it here, and then that might be it. And this was just like a quick little prologue operational meeting every Saturday. I used to do this on Saturdays back in obviously last year. And then people could just, and this was a template that I would just update like what was going on in the environment. And that is a type of meeting that you may not be required as an engineer or like an operational administrator of some team to do. But I would tell you, even if you're just a smaller part of an operational team, it is really good to go look at what's going on there. And I'll tell you right now, if you go on that thing and you see like the networking or the security teams getting hammered a lot because web servers were going down from attacks because the firewall wasn't properly configured. You watch those other teams get hammered, you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go check my stuff. Oh, I don't want my stuff to go down because I watched them tear into those other people. And a lot of times it's not even the tearing it. Like, honestly, I don't think getting tore into is the worst part for me. I hate when people ask me questions and I don't have an answer. I hate that. Makes me feel like I'm a shitty engineer, even if it's something that was like not directly related to something I had worked on. I don't want to be responsible like that. I want to be on top of my stuff. All right, just finished the water bottle. I'm going to crush that water bottle. We also have engineering change boards, ECBs, engineering change boards, sometimes called engineering review boards. So ECB or ERB, right? Those are terms that are kind of common with these. And ECBs or ERBs attempt to, coming back to this other one over here, they tend to be, we've configured a server or some system correctly. And once we've done that with a build book, everything that changes after should be tracked. And changes need to be approved through either this is an engineering change board or a change advisory board. There's a bunch of different terms, or engineering review board or electronic review board. People mean all kinds of things when they say these. But changes should have the following information at a minimum. There's templates out there. But what's the complexity of the change? Is it a routine change? Yeah, change approval board, CAB. Yep. I have CAB up here, but I didn't write it down here. Right? Or cabs are always funny to me because there's this badge in the military now, in the U.S. military, called the Combat Action Badge. And it came out after I got out. But see, I was an infantryman, so I have an expert and a combat infantryman's badge. So I have the cool badges that are always on every general in movies and such. But the Combat Action Badge is this thing. Go look it up sometime. Anyways, the complexity of the change, it might be, there's a very common type of change here called a routine change. What's a routine change? Let me show you guys. I'll just show you guys a routine change real quick. We'll just go to like my servers here. And we'll just go to like my P01 Jumpo 1 box and we'll go look at his storage. And we'll say he needs a new virtual disk on him. So I might just right click. I actually don't need to right click. I can just go over here and just add a new disk and say that this new virtual disk is 5 gigs. There may be a request for this, right? New for stream, right? And this new disk, before I add him, hold on, I'm going to go show you guys something real quick here. Pop them up. We're over on Hostbox because we were messing around. Clear fdisk -L grep -I xvd, right? So there's all my disks, right? And I'm going to add this new disk for stream. And then that new disk for stream is going to go on as xvdj. And I come over here and I see xvdj right there. And he's about 5 gigs and cool. Okay, so that came in. And you might say, Scott, you did that live on the box. That may be something within our company that we assume, provided you have the proper things, we can call that a standard change. And standard changes typically will be like auto approval. If the manager of the different teams and your manager like sign off on, they just hit a button that say, yes, that change is approved for my team, then you're allowed to just go do that in like, let's say a dev environment in the middle of the day. Doesn't matter. It's a standard change that's allowed. Then there's other types of changes. So complexity of changes may be standard. Maybe there's simple and complex. There's all kinds of other terms that you can use. But if the complexity of the change goes up to more complex, then typically we have to start answering more questions like what systems are affected and their associated services. Is there an expected downtime? What's the length and the impact of that downtime if we expect one? Sometimes people say that they don't expect downtime, so it's more easy to get it approved, but then there really is downtime, and that's always bad. I assure you, you don't want that. Who will be performing the changes? Is it an engineer that we know and knows the system well? Or is it something that's not, is somebody going to be performing the changes like one of my junior engineers and I'm going to be out of town? That's not good. So, has the change been performed and tested in a lower environment, right? Maybe this is a standard change to do some testing in a lower environment, and we're just, covering all of our bases because it's going to be hitting a big section of servers when we do this test, right? Maybe multiple teams have asked for it and we're rolling it out, but in a lower environment. So has it been performed and tested in a lower environment? Maybe the answer to that's no, but it's going into dev, so it doesn't matter as much. And then this is a big one, rollback plan. Has it been tested? Have we tested it in, again, that lower environment? Have we done a rollback plan before? Is it well documented? Like, moving back from a kernel, you patch a Linux box, right? And then you move forward to a new kernel. You might think, oh, the kernel has panicked on 7 boxes, so I'll just take those 7 boxes and move them back, and they'll be on the old kernel and everything, it'll be cool. But then I'll fix them during the week, and then we'll get another downtime next weekend and patch them or whatever. And it's like, no, that's almost never the case because other things have moved forward, right? A lot of times my rollback plan is to move the server back to the snapshot. I take snapshots before if it's a virtual environment. If it's a physical environment, oh, buddy, you better test that thing, right? And that's one of the reasons that we do have lower environments is to test these changes and hope that things don't break, right? But rollback plan hasn't been tested. And then changes have to get approvals before going to the board. Almost universally, the asset owner, which, the Linux or Unix team is very rarely the asset owner. I build thousands of servers for companies, but I very rarely, even if I'm the admin on them, I very rarely own that asset. The dev teams or the research teams own it, and I have to request that downtime from them. This actually becomes a major kind of fighting point between teams and such, where we try to figure out, security is forcing us to do it, but the asset owner doesn't want to give up their time. So I've always looked at that kind of like a subway station. Like the subway doors are eventually going to close. we need to go look at it. And then another one, Tiger teams. Cross-team, cross-discipline teams typically stood up for very important and specific focused engineering problems. You will not be on a lot of Tiger teams if you're just doing like support for a company. But if you're building net new things or if you're building engineering solutions for other companies, you will often have Tiger teams. And Tiger teams, we always go Tiger team, roar, right? No, it's always dumb. It's we always joke around about that stuff. It's funny that said roar because I clearly said roar. But anyways, the Tiger teams are this idea that you're focusing and you're sitting down, and it's typically like all hands on deck until some problem is solved, because that problem is very quickly becoming part of what we call the critical path. The critical path is the part that other things can't move forward until that one's done. You guys ever seen one of those video games where you're like, I've got a good example, but it's kind of a very niche game, but where like something's traveling all along a path and you've got to like protect it or something, some cart that's rolling along, but you also have to move stuff out of its way, and you're sitting there like fighting something or defending it, but it's not moving forward. I think a good old example of that was like Dynasty Warriors. If you guys remember the old Dynasty Warrior game where your guy would just be on the battlefield kicking people's asses, but you could still lose the battle if you weren't doing your objectives, right? It's the same kind of idea. I don't even know where I was going with that, but the point is that's that. I have more to add to this, but one of the ones that I think is important to understand is how your project managers are going to talk to you. They're going to talk to you about things with a bunch of terms and terminology. I have a bunch more to add. These were just ones that I had thought of. But they're going to talk about, hey, can we get together a POAM, a plan of action and milestones for some project, right? This is also what agile teams do, but they call them sprints, and they call them all kinds of other things. They may ask you, hey, can you tell me how long something's going to take to do? And I always call that a SWAG, right? A scientific wild ass guess. Some people call them WAGs, which are wild ass guesses, but I like to call scientific because then it sounds more scientific. All right, guys, sorry, I do amuse myself. I have a talk that kind of goes into that a little bit. So when I put this whole thing together as a course eventually, I'm going to be pulling in a bunch of my other talks. But I have a talk called Why Engineering. Some of you guys have been around for it before. Prologue, Why Engineering. So I'm going to pull this one up. And this is a talk that I gave middle of last year when we were doing one of our groups. And we come all the way down to engineering. And when we get to the end, we talk about how we, like, there's two major things that kind of happen in engineering. Because engineering is really just hacking with planning and documentation. Planning on the front and documentation on the back, right? I'm a big fan of this. So how do you plan? So one of the things I tell people is you need to be able to outline. It's a very critical skill for an engineer to be able to take something and break it down into its individual components, right? It's this idea of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and you work from like head to tail or tail to head, whatever you want. The lions seem to tend to start at the back, so maybe they've got something on fine dining. I don't know. But estimation of tasks, SWAGs, scientific wild ass guesses, being realistic with your timing. That's very important, right? Predicting possible issues and future issues, right? That's the failure modes and effects analysis that we talk about. You say IT mullet. Building a minimum viable product and a proof of concept. Can you get it to work to do what's called the fit for use checks? Does it check all the boxes? Is it a web server? Does it operate on port 443? Does it validate TLS through our, through the signed certificate that you got from our certificate authority in the company, and other users that trust that certificate authority can connect to the website? That's the basic capability of a box. Can it do that? Project does not fit the fit for warranty. So MVP and POCs are fit for use. They can do all the things that they're supposed to do. Fit for warranty, right, is when a thing can do it once you start to put it under type of load. So can the 5,001st user connect to the server? That's what fit for warranty is. Does the car start the 5,000th time you turn it on? Starting the first time is fine. That's what a car should do. But does it start the 5,000th time? Yeah. You could do complexity in Agile, absolutely. Oh, and then we have the documentation one as well. But that's neither here nor there. That's not part of today's talk, really. Then we have, so that's, we're talking about what the business side of being an engineer and an admin looks like. The work comes in, meetings that you're going to deal with, project management and types. Now we're on types of documentation. There's a lot of types of documentation that you're going to read and adhere to and you're expected to know. There's policies. There are policies that guide, they're the high level principles that guide behavior, right? Procedures are rubber meets the road. So you might say, what's the difference here? So a policy might look like this, and I always go to sans.org and policies. They've got some really good cybersecurity templates for you out there. Oh no, I didn't want that one. Oh, I didn't want that one. Okay, let me get that out of there because that thing's all popped up now. Let's go to information security policies right here. If you guys need these links, let me know and I'll drop them in the chat for you. But let's say there's a perimeter network access management policy. And we go look at this and we'll go look at the PDF real quick. So here's the PDF for this. And let's see what the PDF says. It says, our perimeter network access policy aims to establish a comprehensive framework for effectively filtering and monitoring network traffic entering and exiting our organization's network boundaries. Okay, can I do anything with that? Like, is there any technical thing I can go put into like my firewall or my network device on the edge to do anything with that? No. That's that's a platitude. That's high-minded talk that doesn't get me anywhere, right? And here's the scope. It covers all network boundaries, including external connections, VPNs. So this starts to scope down where this is applied, which is pretty much everywhere, right? And then it defines what we're going to do, and it says that we're going to maintain an inventory. So I need to have an inventory of all my stuff. Okay. I need to maintain access control lists. So if somebody asks me, what are we filtering on, I can show them. It says that we have perimeter network firewalls. That's probably going to be base network firewall devices, specific devices for that. They're going to be inline firewalls. They're never going to be port mirrored firewalls or what we might call gateway load balancer type, which are just monitoring and inspecting traffic. They're actually inline. They must do IP-based filtering of perimeter network connections, so it must be at least at the IP layer, so source destination IP packets know the above, so they know the TCP or UDP connections above or below them, so that's good. And then on all perimeter networks, they must ensure in how you do build docs. Often you're going to tie back to these 23 things in there. So what I might say is, as I'm building, as I'm proving that my devices are hardened to like a STIG standard, I may show that I'm adhering to these. I might be adhering to the full packet capture. I'm doing that with my SIEM solution. My IDS and IPS are also happening within my SIEM solution. All of these things here, actually we were higher up, huh? All of these things here are happening based on the access control list that I'm running. And so what I'm saying is we can document these in our, some of this is going to be network drawing, this is going to be network drawing, this is going to be an actual document. But the point is I can go and I can point all of these back. All 23 of these things are the things that I have to be able to show and produce if the GRC or the risk, that's governance, risk, and compliance, if they ask me questions about my environment, I should be able to prove that I'm doing those 23 things, right? And that is and you say, well, I don't have anything like that in my company. And I say, well, then start it, right? Start it. That's the best time to do it is right now. Then you go to, so those are high level, high talk. Procedures are rubber meets the road. Procedures are what we actually do if something happens. So where can you get procedures? SANS procedures. And typically these actually come as instant. They do have the incident response stuff, but I want they call these cheat sheets. Here they call them cheat sheets. So here's the SANS ultimate list of cheat sheets, and I show you guys this one. One of my favorite ones to show you guys is, where's the one for? It's right here. Server administrators. Here it is, right here. Make this a little bigger. I just saw it. Server admins is right here. Security incident survey cheat sheet for server administrators. Now, when you look at this, this is not what you would hand a junior engineer in a network operations center late at night to do your, like, oh, hey, there's something wrong with the server, you should go check it out, and then just say, well, it's a Unix box, so do these. No, you would clean this up a little bit and probably have some procedure stuff and then maybe even have some things for people to look at. But these are the general things you want to do. You want to go look at the logs. You want to look at security events, who's logged in, look at the network configuration, maybe see who's connected, right? What kind of ports are being opened and what's being listened to. And is the firewall still on? You could add one in here. There's one that's not asked for right here, but is because even if somebody opens up another port, somebody gets access and turns on a port, if the firewall is blocking that, you're still not accepting connections back in. Now, one of the major problems is almost nobody blocks anything outbound. So if you're not blocking SSH connections outbound, then people will do what's called a reverse shell, right? They'll open a shell out. But in most environments that I work in, we do block reverse shells out. So I don't allow SSH connections out of any type. It doesn't matter what port they use, right? And you can inspect for that. And that can be a thing that's part of your policy. And that thing adheres to like policy part 3 from earlier. And, and then now you're adhering to your policies. But my point is you can use this procedure to start to write up a set of steps that an engineer is going to actually do or an admin's actually going to do if there's something wrong with a server. And then these are the things that they would maybe go do, and then they would add them into the trouble ticket, incident ticket, as they're, responding on a bridge call or something like that. Basically, this gives you something to cover your team. Hey, we're doing all of these things. We can say at the end of like 5 minutes, hey, we've run through the server checklist. We're still checking other things. I'll give you an update in the next 20 minutes. And then you set a little timer, right? Like, you guys might think I just have this timer for fun. But I'll turn my hourglass on or I'll turn my timer on my phone and I'll say check in, 18 minutes. And then I'll be working on, the server to figure out what's wrong with it. And then when this thing pops off, I'll go back. I'll probably be on the bridge call still. And I'll drop back in the bridge call, say, hey, I haven't found anything. These are the things I'm checking. I'm updating our teams or whatever, our Slack message. And I'll give you guys some stuff. And in my notes, I showed you guys this before. In my notes, I am always keeping timestamps of what I do, what servers I'm checking, what I know, what I don't know, what I think I know, what I'm sure that I know. I go and I put those things in I actually have an example of that. And somewhere over here to the left, I have an example of that where we were doing it one time. But that's fine. Standard operating procedures are things that, are just normal things. Somebody asked to add something. Somebody asked to remove something. You got to restart a service on a server. Things that are standard operating procedures can be written up like that. And then I added stopgaps here. Stopgaps are documentation where maybe I'm watching my environment. Maybe I have my network operations team. And network operations, the NOC, looks, and their job every night is to look at a little heads-up display like this. I'll get this out of the way. They look at a little heads-up display like this, and if they ever see network storage cross the 90% mark, and most companies will be a little lower, but if they ever see these go over 90%, then they trigger something and they go clean up all the logs on a server. Okay. And maybe there's that's a stopgap, though. You don't want to live there. You don't want your network guys to have to do that once a week for the rest of the universe. Hold on a second real quick. Let me see if this thing's moving. The thing is not moving. I realize that thing's been sitting there the whole time, but the device actually hasn't moved. So anyways, it's just sitting up there in the corner not doing anything, I just realized. But I saw that thing drawing when I first started. So, okay. So that's stopgaps. Stopgaps aren't, you don't live there, but you write up a procedure to get you limped along past when the next fiscal year ends or when your company gets money again. Maybe you get like a budget on your team and you can buy, you can spend the $30,000 to buy the extra disks and throw them in. You have extra capacity in some of your systems, but you haven't been able to do the work because funding. Guys, we don't all work in companies that have unlimited funds. I know we all want to be over at AWS and Google and all that kind of stuff, but even they have limited budgets. Their individual teams can't just buy whatever they want. They still have to follow a set of constraints, right? So then we have two different types of documentation that I think they fall under procedures, but they're run books and build books. Build books are almost exclusively built They are almost exclusively built by the engineers at build time, updated in real time. Run books are also built by the engineers at build time, and they're updated in real time. And I would say this is more in... What I mean by that is run books are the system state as it is now, and build books work from the time they were originally built. But if you don't update build books in real time, and if you don't go back and update your build books, then a thing you would have to do is keep track of every run book on the server to get the server up to a certain state when it's finally running. So like, there's different thoughts on this. I've seen teams do this different ways. This is one of the things that becomes a real hassle, and this is one of the reasons that so many people like stateful images. Stateful images, the build book is the fact. When you reboot, the server comes up, and then when you're ready to move to the next version, you just deploy a new image with a new build book, and then you're done. Run books are like how the server's running in real time, and maybe things that we might have to change on it and that kind of stuff. Typically, like, I'll release a run book with a team when I build. I wish I could show you guys an example, but they're all specific to customers. I don't have any that I've built that are generic, but they will be all the steps that somebody might need to do to bring the server up. That's actually the first thing I do in my run books, is starting the server from bare metal. We call it bare metal startup. It's almost always one of the tasks I have to train a team on anyways, is we take a whole, like, we'll build a 33 rack server system and we'll turn it all off. We don't do that in training typically, because typically we're doing research on it while we're doing the training, because I'm training the admins. But we will get some time and we will take the server to bare metal, typically before it gets completely pushed in past the final burn-in, the final testing. We will turn the whole server off and bring it up and make sure that they feel comfortable with all the startup commands, working through any of the things that can happen in a startup. Because I'll be honest, you turn 33 racks off, you probably expect 1 or 2 servers not to come up. But that's life. These are things we have to do as engineers, right? We have to know how to do things. So there's that. Okay. Lots of stuff to talk about in documentation. By the way, guys, so this is, I'm just doing this on stream with you guys, all these talks. But this is probably going to be something I'm thinking of putting together as maybe like a course inside of LeanPub, and then people can go do the course and get themselves a little like certificate or something. I think that would be kind of good. Maybe, I don't know, it'll show people that they've spent the time doing this. I'll do a little bit with process improvement. Total quality management and Six Sigma are the two kind of major ways of looking at this. Total quality management is this idea that from the users up, you push quality improvement into your systems and into your processes and stuff. TQM wins are when the people that are watching the systems work look for more efficient ways to do it and push those changes up. Six Sigma is like that, except Six Sigma requires upper management to be involved. That's actually one of the tenets of Six Sigma. You have to have the work driven from a champion who has the authority and power in the organization to make change. So it has to be like VP level or above typically. So Six Sigma is a different process, but either way, they're both about making the process better. So process improvement is a thing that you'll hear from businesses, and if you're in an engineering heavy company, you will have to be constantly trying to improve your processes. There's a bunch of basic little math and statistics involved with this, and mostly what I do is I show you guys the free training for this. And if you say, where's the free training at? You can go over here. You go to beginner start here, and here is all the Six Sigma training, the Six Sigma White Belt and Lean Six Sigma. These are free trainings that exist out there for you guys. Where's this at? Kevin said documenting everything. Yeah, absolutely. That just reminded me. I need to add a couple things in kind of project management talk, but it's also in some of this other one is bike shedding. And I would say yak shaving. Anybody know what bike shedding or yak shaving are? Those are both problems. And does anybody know good examples of them? I know some good examples of those. So, anyways, that's that. TQM, yeah, total quality management. I think that you should understand the basics of it. I think there's some value in that. Let me see who this phone call's from. Give me 1 second here, guys. Hold on. All right, I'm here. So yeah, total quality management. Sorry, that was some phone call. I'm not on call, but I thought I'd answer it just in case. And then this is, again, we're in business stuff, but this is a very important one. I'm going to be adding a lot to this one. Employee reviews. You're going to get assessed, right? And this is the thing. I don't think a lot of people like being assessed, but you're going to get annual reviews, and you're going to get one-on-one with your bosses, maybe weekly or monthly, and different companies are going to have different cadence. But I tell people all the time, this one is for you. The annual review is for you. And what I mean by that is, if you poorly perform in your annual review, you're going to affect yourself within the company, right? This one's for you, and you should be documenting your work throughout the year, documenting your finished projects, right? I think you should collect any kudos you get from other managers. And kudos is a generic term. That's not like some actual thing. Kudos is just anytime somebody tells you, hey, good job. Or you get an email back from some manager on a different team that says, hey, thanks for helping my team. You really saved us XYZ. You really saved us weeks of planning, or you really cut through some problem. Save all of that stuff. Because annual reviews, they're really for you. Now, they're every year, and they're, for the company to assess you in this and this. But you're almost all engineering and admin roles I've ever been in. This is what determines what type of raise you get, right? What type of raise, and if there's a bonus, if you even get a bonus, right? So this is important. And then one-on-ones with bosses, these tend to be just, they are for you, but they're also for the company. But level set expectations and course correction. And to course correction, I say you should ask questions if you feel lost. You should say, hey, I think you should assign me one of the seniors to help me. Hey, I think you should assign me this that nobody's been working on, and give me 2 of these juniors to work with me on it, so that when I figure it out, we have other people trained up on how to do these things, right? And you might say, well, the first one sounds like I'm a junior person. Yeah, if you're a junior person, ask for a mentor. If you're a senior person, if you're a senior person and you want to either continue moving up, or if it's not really an option, like I won't really ever move up in my company, right? That I just kind of have my principal title and do whatever I want. But if I'm not like mentoring other people and I'm not doing these other things, I should ask to do that, because that's what they're looking for. That's what companies look for in anything above senior or staff level. Senior staff, principal, all of these people are expected to finish projects and train other people, right? Pass on the knowledge you have, right? So your one-on-one with the bosses can help you to do what we call level set expectations, or course correction on if you're not doing what you should do. And if your manager told you in every one-on-one all year that you were doing great, and then you've been collecting all your stuff, and your annual review should go smooth, because they never told you that they expected more from you, and you showed all the ways in which you exceeded expectations. That should knock it out of the park for you, right? All right. Then now, this whole talk was around getting into systems work. So the next one is you got to get together a resume. You want to try to be able to get everything into one page, and I think you should lead with what is asked for by the job. So I'm going to pull up a recent. Here's my little cheap short resume that I use right here. This is my Het short resume. And this is up in the Discord if anybody needs it. But it's like a little about me, and I lead with what I think companies want, which is summary of qualifications, maybe industry standard certifications that they care about, languages that I feel proficient to write professionally if I need to, and then maybe some recent conferences that I've talked at. I'll be putting Scale on here soon, right? That kind of stuff. Hey, Northern Chimp, how's it going over on the YouTube side? We're just kind of hanging out. Recent jobs that I've held, right? Things that I've done all the way back to 10 years from now, or 10 years from current. And then education. Those are all the things that I have on my resume. If I didn't think that my work was more important, like if I was going for, okay, let's say I was going for a job with a college. The very first thing that a college cares about is this right here. They care about your education. That's all. They care that you have doctor before your name. That's literally, you guys might not believe me, but like academia, the best portrayal of working in academia I've ever seen, for sure, is that South Park episode where they're like farting in the glasses and smelling it. All the people in California are like sniffing their own farts because that's what they think is wonderful and how perfect they are. That's academia for you. If you don't have PhD before your name, you're not shit. And if you do, then you're great, right? And that's kind of the way it is. So if I was going for like a dean position at a college, I would move this up to the top. Because they don't care that I've been an engineer and moved up in roles and stuff. They care that I've been teaching for 20 years, right? Well, it's 17 now. It's just over 17 right now. They don't care about certs. They care a little bit about certs for maybe like if I'm teaching cloud computing or something, they want me to have some of the AWS ones or something. But I'm saying get a resume together, make it look clean. And then if you're putting in solutions, let's say you're doing, one of our guys is looking for cloud roles right now. You would focus more on the cloud stuff you've done in here in your tasks than you would other things. Also, another thing, when I do resumes, I try to give numbers here. Like I try to show what I've done, but if I can, I talk about like numbers and things that I improve. So in this case, I developed a patch deployment system that hit all CVSS scores 7+ within 30 days and CVSS scores and all of the rest of them in 90 days. That was our cadence at our company. I also defined a procedure for evaluation and mitigation of zero-day attacks for both vendors supplied patches and when patches are not available. So if patches were not available, then they would not. Got the confirmation on Skill Talk. I have not gotten a confirmation on that yet, Control Byte. I think I can log in there and check. I did get asked a question when I first did it, and I got asked to put a picture up, but I can go look to see if they've put me on there. I do need to, if I am on there, I need to update my presentation. It'll take me a couple hours to get it where I want. But I do have some labs that people can do. And then I say lead with what is asked for by that job, meaning take that basic one that you've built and put it into each of the different, take that one that you built and then cater it to each of the jobs that you put in for. If it's a cloud engineering role, focus on the cloud engineering stuff you've done. If it is a Linux admin role, do Linux admin stuff. If it is, whatever other thing it is, work on that. Okay. And then I said practice interview skills. So you've done all these things, right? Like you've figured out up here what you want to do, and that's Linux. And then here's the Linux that you've learned how to do right here, these things. Then here's the business stuff and what to expect in a role and some of the terminology you're going to use. And now you practice it in an interview. And then I say, what does a company want to know in an interview? What are they actually looking for? And, I've been a guy, I'm almost always in interviews for technical reasons. People have me there. I don't think I've ever been invited to an interview in my entire career for anything other than to see if somebody was technically a fit. So they want to know two things. Can you do the job and will you do the job? Those are the two things they want to know. Practicing interview skills can also join groups with similar interests. We've got Prolog. That's a free group in Discord. Go hang out with people, talk with other people. People are always talking about jobs and stuff like that. Toastmasters, guys, if you're not familiar, if you don't feel good talking in front of a group of people. How's it going, Robodom? We're just going over getting the job, Robodom. So this is kind of day 2 of me going through my notes. I'm thinking of making a little course on this and just adding pictures and stuff like that. I have a bunch more things to add, and then I'm just going to add it into this template that I have here. But right here, this is an important thing because most people don't know this. There is no other place on planet Earth where you are allowed to or expected to brag about yourself except in an interview. Now, what does that mean? That means that there are very few people who are good at bragging about themselves. I know some people that are good at bragging about themselves because that's all they do all day. But for everybody else, we who have common sense and are polite with people, we do not sit around and brag about ourselves all day, right? So since that's the case, you are probably out of practice with bragging about yourself. And I'm just saying that. I mean, if you're not allowed to do it anywhere and you probably don't sit around and think about it all the time, then there's that, yeah. And then I say put in for the jobs. Look for the jobs in office, remote, these kind of things. Akshanya said we getting some GPUs to one of these days. I'm planning on doing it, Akshanya. I just saw that Digits was out probably like a month ago, but I had spent a bunch of money already on that other server. So I'm gonna get that server up, get some more get some more use out of that in the environment, and then I'll definitely work that on over there. Yeah, Akshanya, I'll tell you, it's a weird thing, but like I learned about this in college. I was in a change management class, and the doctor was a female, and there were these two kind of loud, outspoken females in the class. And I remember that the doctor, the professor, she's up there saying, a lot of times when women talk about themselves in interviews, they'll say, we did it, and the team accomplished, and this and this. But when men go in interviews, they say, I did it, and this and this and this. And they use the proper first person because it was the things that they did. And I raised my hand in this class and said, do you think that's why maybe women sometimes get paid a little less than men? And I swear to God, those two other women shot daggers at me. And I was like, oh gosh, like they actually physically threw daggers. And I was like, oh gosh, I didn't say that's how it should be. That's just the way that I heard it was. Anyways, the one butch one wanted to fight me, but she went down pretty quick because I know jujitsu. But anyways, that's not the point. My wife just looked at me like, what the hell is my husband talking about? Anyways, no, I'm just kidding. Mostly charges were dropped. So, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You guys are like, what the fuck? No, it was a college class. There was no fighting. Where I'm going with that, though, is you're not allowed to brag other places than the interview. So most of you are not going to be good at it. It just keeps going. Control bite. Yeah. I had a teacher. Well, she wasn't really a teacher. She was one of the helpers for the marketing program when I was in high school, Miss DeFamio, and she figured me out. And it actually really bugs me. I shouldn't say this in front of my wife. She figured me out. She found out that if you just keep looking at me, I'll just keep talking nervously. And she used to do it to me, and I couldn't stop talking. And I was really a really bad character trait of mine, probably from being slightly autistic or something. But anyways, she would do that to me, and she'd just sit there and look at me, and I'd just keep talking. All right, I'm gonna stop now. But anyways, practicing your interview skills. You got to know how to do this. We do have some limited amount of this inside the Discord. Sometimes Sending Grounds will run some of these. Sometimes I run some of these. And Northern Chimp said I'm a monkey until I'm expected to show off. Yeah, I just want you guys to know that the company wants to know, can you do the job? Can you talk the talk? A lot of us know a good amount of Linux, but we're not good at talking about how the pieces fit together. Somebody asks us about last time we built a storage array and our mind goes blank or something. And we just have to practice. We just have to think about the things we know. We have to know that the patterns of the things they're going to ask us are going to be the same. They're going to ask us, how much do we do documentation, and how do we handle incidents, and do we understand how to troubleshoot? They're going to ask us all the same things in every interview, guys. The interviews are going to start sounding the same over time. And you're just going to have to think about what shows what I know how to do and what I'm confident in talking to and working through. So I didn't even see King Bun slide in here. How's it going, man? And Control Bite, I've seen you in here, but yeah, wifey's taking notes on the sidelines. That's funny, actually. She's typing in her phone over there. I don't know what's going on. Stop. She said stop. That's her stop right there. That's hers. Anyways, yeah. So these are kind of things that we were looking at, and then get together a resume that shows, put your best foot forward on these different things, start to practice your skills, and then start to put in for the jobs, right? And I think that you guys can do that and get ready for that. All right. So I had my presentation. I'm gonna populate this. Oh, this was our self-assessment matrix from yesterday. These are all of the. Oh, and I hadn't shown you guys this. This is kind of useful. This is one of the few things that I kind of like that is outside of my normal talking points. Have you guys ever seen I think that's an ikigai. Is that right? And what this is, what's going on here? This is the idea that you find what you love, like something you want to do. You find something that the world needs. You find something you're good at. And then you find something you can be paid for. And if they all happen to be the same thing, right here, then you found this thing. You're in that sweet spot, they call it, right? Yeah, it's a good Japanese principle, absolutely. Then you're an AI, yeah, if you can do all of these things. But it's like, and I do like this because it aligns you to this like we were talking yesterday about like a loose model. A loose model, this doesn't I could show you this up front and then you'd be like, okay, that's cool, Scott. I don't know. And then what I would tell you guys is go through the process, right? Start like where we did the other day, where I had you guys. Oh shoot, it was in that. It was in this, wasn't it? And I say, go find what you want to do. Do a technical self-assessment. You may find that you want to do Linux and networking, and I say, wonderful, you're in the right spot. But you may hate database. I don't want to do database work, guys. I tell you, I look at database people like managers look at Linux people. I do not have any interest in doing SQL like that. I can do basic SQL to test a server, but I do not do. I do SQL to harden servers too, but I do not do SQL to like join queries and multiple tables and that kind of crap. I don't. No interest. Some people live there. They're like the Brer Rabbit. You're throwing them in the briar patch, right? So, anyways, I'm showing you guys all that stuff to say this has been the topic the last 2 days. Was just us going over these notes. You want to get a job. What do? You figure out what you want to do. And oh wow, it's Linux, right? We want to learn some Linux. So what are the skills? There's a bunch of skills. They're in no particular order. This was actually from a job posting. And we worked through documentation, incident management, troubleshooting, monitoring, operating the system, patching and updating, configuring, automation. I could put in there securing the system. Security might be a good one to have in there as well. And then there would be a whole bunch of stuff in there. And then what does the business side look like? Where does the work come from? You get tickets and managers and drive-bys, and sometimes you proactively monitor your system. There's all these different kind of things. You said, what if I want to wrestle servers? I actually could wrestle servers if I needed to. I know how to wrestle. I've been doing that for like 25 years almost. Meetings, like what do the meetings look like? And I need to add more to these, but these are the general meetings we deal with. Project management talk and things that you're going to hear and expect to know what they are from people. Types of documentation, the different ways that you're going to see things written and the things that you're going to have to know about the company and procedures that you're going to have to write and update and keep track of and those kind of things. So process improvement, like how do we make things better? And I'm going to add to this part. Employee reviews. Remember, employee reviews are for you guys. You get an annual review to see if you get paid more, right? So that's kind of important. Brad said, just found your live stream, interesting stuff. I've been a Linux nerd since the mid-90s and working my way through being a Cisco networking nerd until I found a job I really enjoyed, which was working with a contract house doing embedded stuff on Linux. Nice. The company was bought by a bigger company and then went to damage. Oh, no. Did you guys lose the... Yeah. Yeah, that happens. Robodom, will you drop the Discord over there for them if they want? You guys are welcome to hang out. Obviously, we have this big Discord that people can go hang out in and stuff. And he said, I don't care, it's still better even coding sysadmining. I just like working with Linux recommendations. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Linux. I do Linux all day. That's and then our Discord is all about trying to help people get into Linux further, right? Like if you're not doing it now or if you're out of work and trying to get back into it, that's what we try to focus on over there, is stuff that you guys can do. We have some courses that we've written that are free sysadmin stuff, but that might be simple for somebody that's been doing it. We've got securing Linux, how do we secure Linux as an engineer? And then the one that we're currently building, we're in week 11 this week, but we're going to be doing 12 next week, which is configuring that. This is an automation course, so this has all been sysautomation, mostly with a tool called Ansible, right? Yeah, Robodom, I'm actually thinking of jumping completely over to. I've been very much thinking about going over to Linux completely, even on my desktop for sure. Windows is. I've had this Windows box crash probably at least once a month since I went to Windows 11, and that's kind of too much if you ask me. So after we talked about all the work and stuff, we talked about get together a resume, put the things in there, get a one-page resume, make it, put, you want to be as many differentiators. get as many positive differentiators as you can. Like that's things that are good, and don't put down all your felonies and stuff. Put down all of your things that you have accomplished, right? Um, we want to practice our interview skills and then put in for jobs, right? Those are the kind of things that I think that you should do. It's not a perfect plan, but it's a pretty good one. And then we have a lot of ways to help people do all of these different things, right? A bunch of different things out there, mostly around like our Killer Coda. Killer Coda is this free site on the web. I do not run it. I'm always telling people that because people always think I run this site, and I do not. But I do write a bunch of the labs for them. So all of my labs are over here. And you can go in there and you can learn Linux or Ansible. So Linux 36 scenarios. There's a whole bunch of Linux things you can do and get good at and figure out how to work through. Exshunya Weekend Intensive. Yeah, I do want to have one soon. We probably won't do this weekend. I just found out I have so many things to do this weekend. But we're still doing the automation course, and then I'm going to have to run out to, I think I'm watching How to Train Your Dragon as a movie, but with a symphony. Yes. It's going to have like a symphony in front of it, so that might be kind of cool. I do really like that movie too, so that'll be fun. As soon as you get in on Discord. Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, we have a pretty poppin' little Discord. I think we got about 40, what do we got, 45 something? We can actually do a user count. The server will tell us. 45, 44, so the bot tells us. The bot's Fisherman Guy Bros bot, and then does all that for us. So, all right, guys, the wife's home, so I'm probably going to pop off of here. Control Byte said, "I'll shout this out: resource for free Credly badges, which can be added." Absolutely, please do. It's very good to have anything that gives people just one more. I'm telling you, man, when people are making cuts and they're like, "Hey, I really like these last 3 people," and then they're looking over the resumes a few times, you want to have something positive on there. Whatever we can do to get, whatever we can do to get people to pick us, right? And it's sad that that's the way it is, but man, when we're looking for work, we gotta find work where it is. So, I can help you with the procedural stuff. I can help you learning the Linux side of things and building this stuff. That's all stuff that I am relatively good at. But then you're being able to prove it and articulate it. Nobody can do the interview for you, right? Like you have to be the one that goes and does that last part. So, okay. Oh, and wifey, your thing hasn't moved my whole stream. It's been sitting over there. I watched it finish right as the stream started, and it has been sitting there for the last. Hold on, guys. We're gonna check this thing and see if it gets working.
It's moving.
Is it?
It's clearing right now.
No.
Yes, it is.
Hold on. This thing is locked for 12:41 today. Oh no. Oh no. Guys, I have failed you. It's been working, but I didn't refresh the page.
Oh.
So the thing's over there clearing. You guys can see that now. All right, that's my fault. That's my fault. I should have checked it better. You guys see it drives around in a little circle and clears the thing off. This guy's in tech. Yeah, I didn't restart the server. I didn't turn it off and turn it back on again. That should have been the first thing I tried. I didn't realize the web page was stuck. I didn't see even the camera, the counter on the camera was stuck. So it had been done for a while. Actually, it's like 3 or 4 patterns past. Oh my gosh. I missed all that. Oh, what can you do, guys? What can you do? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming by. I'm going to stop here because the wife's here and we're going to hang out for a little bit. But, yeah, look, you guys can watch that thing to drive in a bigger circle now. I should be back on possibly tomorrow night. And, obviously you guys can always find me down in the Discord. We got to clean up I got a couple of things to clean up and finish for the automation people and get caught up and get into week 11. Week 12, which we're doing next. And then we're almost done with that course. So we're just cleaning up the last few things and putting that out there. So, all right. I will talk to you guys later. Take care.